Well, hey, folks, welcome to the non-show part of the show. This is the pre-show. And we always have to come on just a couple of minutes ahead of time to make sure we're all set. We go live on the radio station at 4:03. So you just get us. You get us in the raw here, so to speak. And how you doing, Wendy?
Disheveled.
You don't look disheveled, but I understand why you are. So I get it. So, hey to everybody that's starting to gather over there. We've got Field Guy. I saw him a little earlier. Uncle Dave Potter is here. He says, hey, Scotty. Hey, hello, Wendy. Hello, everyone else. There's our Irish contingent, Niall Parkinson, is in the room. Good to see you, Niall. Roger Rabbit. Good to see you, brother. Glad you're here. Wadger, so says Niall. Kendall Blanchard. He just said, Wendy. Kendall just said, if that's disheveled. I told her she was such a hot mess today that maybe she shouldn't even come on.
Total.
Yeah. So we got about a minute and a half and we go live. I just had to make sure everything's all set. We are set everywhere. And we will go dark about 15 seconds before showtime for those of you who aren't used to the procedure. Dark and quiet. And then we will come in after the opening credit. So what do we got? A minute and 14 seconds left.
I love our jingle. Our jingle's so good. I
love it.
Music.
I want to do something more spectacular for the opener, though. We got to get some more pictures, maybe some little video clips, moving clips, and do a nice collage and fades with that music in the background. I think that would be fantastic.
It's kind of smooth, though, the way it kind of goes in. It's kind of smooth.
It's smooth. Well, I used the pictures we had. And maybe I come over there and we go do some filming at some castles.
Am I going to get you on my island?
Yes. It's been a while. Yes. So we'll do some filming and we'll do some stuff for new trailers and openers. I think that would be fantastic. We're going to get Uncle Dave to come along, do the filming, the directing.
Dave. On
Uncle
my
Dave.
island.
All right. Here we go. We're going to go dark. Wendy, I'm going to take you out, but I'll bring you back in. Folks, we're going to go dark, and we're going to start this show in a few seconds. Hey, folks, welcome to this, another edition of Robertson. And I don't know why, but yesterday, almost all through my own show last night, I kept calling you Wendy Peterson.
I saw.
And only one time I caught myself and I went, why did I say Peterson?
So I don't.
That was really odd. For as long as I've known you, and I've done that to people before, I've called them by the wrong name, and I'm like, excuse me, I've only known you for 40 years. Yeah. How could I do that?
Wendy Peterson? Who's this person? I don't know her.
I have no idea. All I can think is that it's somewhere in my past, there's a Wendy Peterson, and that flows off the tongue. Wendy Robertson is like changing consonants. Wendy Peterson seemed to work. I don't know what it was. It rolled off my tongue accidentally. So here I am with Wendy Peterson. And
straight Robertson.
Wendy Robertson, my favorite Wendy Robertson. And we're going to talk about some interesting stuff tonight, I think. But before we do, I'm going to take you a little bit off guard here. I want to ask you a question. This is something I've talked about on my own show, a little experience I had, and I just wanted to get your quick take on it.
Okay.
You may even know once I start telling you what it's about. Remember the Ouija board story?
I do.
I have a Ouija board. It's an old Ouija board that I bought at a sale somewhere, like a garage sale for pennies. And it's probably from the 50s or the 60s, and it's still in its old box, and I've never used it. Now, that doesn't mean nobody else has used it. All those of you who are in paranormal, and you, Wendy, you know what some of the implications can be and the ramifications of using Ouija boards. Well, it's just sat in my garage for 6 or 7 years. And one day, a few weeks ago, I walked outside in the morning, and it was laying out in the yard, face down in the grass about 30 feet from the door. And I checked, nobody, my kids, nobody had taken it out of the garage. And it can't blow out of there. And I just went, okay, all of that out of the way. I put it back in the garage. Well, within 24 hours, several things went missing that I have not seen since. And this happened about 3 or 4 weeks ago. My ring, which has the St. Benedict's cross on it, and all the initials for the blessings against curses and so on. I'm not Catholic, but I appreciated the sensibility of the ring. And I always wear that. It's gone. I lost it that day somewhere in the house. Haven't seen it. Also, my car keys disappeared the same day. Both personal items. Now, something else, and a couple of little things keep happening. My glasses, my black rimmed glasses that I use solely for computer have gone missing. And they're nowhere. I use them nowhere except right here at this desk because they're only made for my computer. And those are gone. So I'm starting to find this pattern of personal items are missing. Do you see, am I reading too much into that? Or do you see any correlation in that? Or is it just pure coincidence?
You gotta love the Ouijas. I mean, they're slippery little suckers, aren't they?
Yeah.
If Mark was with me, he'd probably say, well, maybe just coincidence, maybe not. I've never used a Ouija. I have known people that have used them and had some really bad experiences. I've never had one in the house. Been drawn to one, but never got one. But they are a communicative tool, right? And you don't know the history. You don't know the energy around it. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. It has its own energy. You don't know what that particular board has ever been used for, who used it, what its history is. So I would say that the fact that things have just started to go missing bit by bit is either one thing you could say was coincidence, but there's been quite a few things happening now since this board came into your property. So I would say you've probably either got a mischievous person who is maybe linked to the board, if it is the board, because how long have you been living at this new property?
Well, the new property, we've been here for about 2 months. And but I've had the board in my possession, but it's never come in the house. It's always been out in the garage with storage things. I just bought it to keep it because I thought it might be worth something someday because it's old.
How long have you been there?
This house?
Yeah.
About 2 months.
And how long has this stuff been happening?
This just started about a month ago.
It could be the property you're in. It could be the fact that there are mischievous, and I don't mean that as in nasty always, because when you say that, people think they're nasty. It could be the fact that the property has its own energies, its own spirits, whatever, and the Ouija board could just be the coincidence, or it could be to do with the board. Either way, I think you can't rule out the property. And yeah, that's a good point, Kendall.
I could ask the board, but then I'm opening it up.
You could ask you could get your rods out, love.
Yeah, I could do that.
We know you like it when you get your rods out. And
yeah, absolutely.
You could ask it the question. But I would say that it's either the property that you've moved into and someone's having a bit of a laugh, and normally sometimes it can be children. You know, it can be spirit children that sort of take things from you. And then it's happened to me, like I've lost it, and then some time has gone past and I found it in the most weird place. And I'm like, I never put it there. So I would say you could have two things going on there. It could be the new property. Now, also, if you're in your property and there's a lot of arguments or there's a lot of negative energy, and also you have young daughters, sometimes spirits can be drawn into that kind of energy, and they can be mischievous, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not so great. So you have to also, like, is the house balanced? Is it cleansed? I mean, Mark would say that's a load of old poppycock, but that, you know,
yeah.
But for me, I found all those things have helped. So it could be something like that.
Now, and I don't ever want to come across as I have a belief that certain things work a certain way.
Yeah.
That there is a supernatural world as much as there is a natural world. I get that. I've heard a lot of stories about Ouija boards. I don't think I've ever experienced anything negative that I know of.
Yeah.
But it's either all just a bunch of coincidences and I'm clumsy and I lost all my stuff somehow. But it all seems to be my little personal items. Glasses, ring, keys.
And it's all your stuff, isn't it? It's all your stuff.
And it's all my stuff.
So either you've got a magpie in the house, or somebody wants. I mean, somebody's got a thing about you, right? You know, I mean, you would look at this from two sides. Is there anybody in the house that could be doing it? Is there anybody in the house trying to make you crazy? You know, let's rule out that first of all.
But I always say, I have a mind like a steel sieve. But, you know, I may have just forgotten. I may have misplaced it.
Yeah, but you can say that with one or two, but not when it starts going three.
Yeah, it starts to get to three things now. So Ouija acts like a compass. I thought of taking out my my rods back here. I thought of whipping out my rods and, don't blush now.
Not the rods, really? Yeah.
Really. And taking those out and just seeing if that will give me direction. I've found things with that before. I lost something once in the house. It was a bag full of a big Ziploc bag that was double bagged, rolled up of sand from Silsila, Egypt. And I lost it. I couldn't find it anywhere. And this was a few years ago. And I used those rods and I asked it, can you point to where this sand, is it in the house? And it crossed yes. And I said, can you point to where it is? And it would do this. And I'd walk and I'd look and it kept leading me to the bookshelf. And it's not on the bookshelf. And then I thought, wow, maybe it fell behind the books. And I pull out a book and sure enough, there it is. It had fallen behind the books. So maybe the rods can give me a hand with that. I don't know.
I think with a Ouija, like as I said, I've never had one in the house. I've got an ornament which kind of looks like one, and a friend of mine actually said that is still a Ouija. And a lot of people call them Ouija, but obviously it's Ouija. And so I would say that either get rid of the board, unless you're really fond of it. Get the board cleansed.
I could cleanse it.
Sage it, like white sage it as much as you can to get rid of it. Or you could be white sage, you know, it could be the fact that there's something in your house that since you've moved in has attached itself to you. Or there's someone in the house that is trying to make you cray-cray.
I do have some curiously strong mystifying mints.
Oh my God, look at that. It's amazing.
And the mints are the shape of little planchettes.
Yes, I've got this great ornament, which is in the shape of a Ouija board too, but it's not. But yeah, Niall's quite right. And I must say hello, because he wrote a very nice comment. He actually said, I'm supporting my neighbour. So it's quite nice that I've got my next door neighbour saying, you know, supporting me. Hi, Niall.
Hey, Niall. And who else? We got field guys here. Steve came in. Steve Clark. Mossy Man, 789 News.
How are you?
And let's see. Project Skyfalls is here. Remeldian is here. So the gang's all here.
Gang's
and more coming. All right. Well, that was that. That's all I wanted to ask you. I did want to get. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I'm gonna tap you here and say, do you have anything cognitively that comes to you when I even talk about this story? Is it?
There's more to it than meets the eye.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's supernatural.
Okay. That's fair enough. I get that. Okay. I was just curious if you got anything that if your mojo spoke up. So
but I could ask, I could get my I haven't got the rods, I've got the old pendulum. I'm more than happy to sit down and ask it and see what it comes up with.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Not on air.
No. Yeah. No.
We'll do that another time. Hey, Rudy Dog. Ken Ballos is here. KB from Morning Coffee with KB every morning at
KB, who's right now when I say that is going, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. You're fabulous.
You're fabulous. Mm-hmm. Okay. Which sounds better, KB, from me or her? You're fabulous, dude. So I think he probably likes your version better. Professor Bauer, good to see you as well. And is this thing on and doing its own thing? Yes, it is. Well, let's get into our topic today. This is a topic you recommended to me. You said, let's do this. So why don't you introduce it and get it rolling?
Well, we talked last night about I'm going on a journey tomorrow, and and we talked about journeys that changed our lives. What journey have you been on in your life? And it doesn't have to be like going somewhere. It could be a metaphorical journey. What journey changed your life? And that's what we thought we'd look at today, is a few that has changed our life, or at least had a profound effect on us.
All right. And I think too, maybe this is something we can open it up for callers at the end if we have time.
For sure.
If we don't exhaust our time. So, Wendy, what would you say if you were to sit back, and I'm asking everybody out there who's listening to, if you would sit back and say, I have the one trip, journey, adventure, thing that I have done that became a defining moment in my life and maybe changed you forever. It could be something that, it doesn't have to be a cataclysmic change. It might have been a small change. Might have been something. Do you have anything like that? What's your version of that?
There have been many journeys in my life that have had that effect on me, that's for sure. Some of them personal, some of them not. I probably think, and it's well known, probably by my friends, as it is you, probably the major journey for me was when I left the United Kingdom in 2005, got on a plane and went thousands of miles away and went to Canada, and I met and married within a very short time. But I had the greatest affair of my life with myself, with that country. And that country has had a profound effect on me. It's changed me forever.
Well, and you're actually leaving for Calgary tomorrow.
I am, yes. That's why I'm disheveled, because I've been running around like a headless chicken and doing this, that, and the other. So yes, it's had a profound effect on me in a way I never thought possible.
Well, in what way? What way can you describe that? When we say, I had this defining moment or a change in my life, it's one thing to say that. Can you share any of those details? What was it about that trip that did that?
I was a city girl. I'm from South London. I was a city girl. I've never really been a country girl, and I never, for me to just meet someone and go, I'm going to be there in 3 weeks, and I believe if you want something, you can make it happen, but because when you start putting that energy out there, the law of attraction and energy starts picking it up, and the more energy you put into that. So it was obviously something that meant quite a lot to me. And I went over there, and I was in a strange country, didn't know anything, was walking the street for hours on my own because he was at work. And so I had to quickly learn to have the greatest relationship of my life, which was with me, and learn to like me. And I discovered strengths that I never knew I had. And I also discovered that actually I do like being out, away from the city. I love the mountains. I love the energy. The thing about Canada is that it's such a new energy, but it's also an old energy. When you go there, you're tapping into two kinds of energies, and
Right.
you've got the old native, energy of the land, but then you've also got the new energy as well, because it's quite a new country. I don't live in Canada. No, I live in the United Kingdom. But I go back and forth when I can. But it calls to me that something just crossed over in me. It's like it calls to me. And I remember having a reading just before I came home to the UK, and the reader said to me, "You were catalysts for each other. He was meant to go to the UK. You're meant to be in Canada." And it's true, because he's always been very happy. My ex-husband's always been happy in the UK and doesn't want to go back. And yet it's me that now wants to go back. And it's like it crossed over, because I learned so much about myself. I discovered strengths I didn't have, and I saw myself through different eyes, and I actually realized that I was okay, that I was all right. I was a good person, which I think before leaving and having that time away, I probably doubted, as in quite unconfident in certain ways.
Sure. Now, I know, I don't know how many years ago this was now, 7 or 8 years ago, when you were going to relocate over there, and you were going to open up a business over there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a friend of mine, we were going to open a store, and it was all looking rather good. And then, situations in life come along, and you just can't do it, or at least at that time you can't do it. I'm very lucky that my best friend is there, and I would say that's lucky, but it's not, because to have a best friend that's 7,000 miles away that I can't go for coffee with, I can't see, and if there's a problem in each other's lives, we have to, the time difference, we have to deal with the phone.
Right.
It's very painful, because time is going past and you can't get that time back with each other. And also when I was over there, like my family here, I was missing out with family time here. And the thing is, once you've gone back and forth to another country, you're never the same person, because part of your heart lies in that other country. And now my bestie, she loves the UK so much that when she leaves here, she's like, I've left part of my heart in the UK. And I remember someone said to both of us, they said, actually, I don't think it's the country, I think it's each other that inspires you. But actually, I have to say that I was drawn back and forth before her and I became as close as we are now. But I can't tell you, like when I go to Canada, my spiritual energy, my spirituality, my clairvoyance goes massive. It really opens up, and it's like cold water's just been thrown over me, and everything is coming through like this much quicker. Whereas in the UK, it feels more enclosed and not so free flowing.
Sure.
I also like the energy of the people, because in Canada they say, if you want to make something happen, how can we do it? This is great. Let's make this happen. In the UK, it's kind of like, really? You're going to be able to do that? I mean, what's that going to involve? So there's swings and roundabouts, but now I have the confidence to get on a plane on my own. There's my dog in the back, see, he's there. And go back and forth, which is when I get the opportunity to. Yeah.
All right. Well, and I'm wondering, and do you think that this could be connected to the Native American culture that is there, only because the spirituality part? What have you got in Calgary? You've got the I can't even pronounce it. I just called it up here. The Tsuut'ina Nation, the Stony Nakota Nation, the Siksika Nation. They have a spirituality that is so linked into the surroundings there, the mountains, the forests, and everything that's there. So, do you think any of that? Do you feel any of that playing, tugging at your heart a little bit?
I tell you, as a kid, we probably all watched cowboy and Indian films, right?
Sure.
And it never. I was always on the cowboy side because I think I should have been born a cowboy. But when I went over there and I first saw my first native, I just couldn't stop staring at them because I thought they were so beautiful and completely different from anything I've ever seen in my life. And I just fell in love with them. Unfortunately, at the time that I went, there was quite a lot of natives like on the street begging, and then also there were drunk quite a bit, and then also you could feel a little bit intimidated. But as time went on and I found my feet, it didn't really have that effect on me anymore. But I met this one gentleman out there, and I'm trying to remember his name, but it was something like Chief Buffalo something white something. He was, and I was in Silver Star, which is a high up resort over there, and he was just magnificent. He was just the stuff of films. He was magnificent.
Sure.
And he came over to me just out of the blue, and he just said this line to me. He went, before, what was his words? I don't remember this exactly right. Before you use this, meaning heart, you've got to heal this. And I said to him, do I need to heal myself that way? And he went, yes, you do. And we spoke for a short period of time, and then he just disappeared. And I thought, where is this gentleman? I've got to find him. And then I hunted him down, and he was on Facebook for a while, and we chatted for a while. I went to somewhere called Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump, which is a fantastic place, which I've never been anywhere, which is the silence is deafening. And it's where obviously the natives would chase the buffalo over the cliff. They would be waiting for them, and sadly they would finish the job. And there were so many of them done over the years that the ground took on the redness of the blood and everything. But they would use everything that was, obviously they respected the animal. They thanked the animal for giving their life, and the food and the warmth and everything. And there was a Vision Quest. There's a Vision Quest mound there, which you're not allowed to go on. It's protected. And it was the strangest feeling when I was there. It was just kind of like, I can't describe it. It felt like it had its own pulsating beat, but there was nothing going on. But it was a really strange experience. And when I went to the museum there was all this history. And my mum was telling me that years ago, some members of the family came from abroad. They don't know where they were from, but they had, and I can't remember the word used, but really tan skin. But she said it wasn't tan like if it was, Pakistani or anything like that.
Copper skinned.
It was like native. And she said, and they're supposed to be in the family somewhere. And then because I've been married twice, as you know, but when I was married to my first husband, he's from Belfast, but his great grandmother was Sioux.
Oh.
And so can you imagine her coming all the way over here to Belfast and going, I'm really not sure about this. And when you see the photographs of her, she was this little person, like this in the photograph. And they used to call them, and they still do, Mad Dog Moor, because when they used to lose their temper, you see this come over them like, wild.
That might be the Irish part.
It could be the Irish part, but it also...
no offense, Niall.
Yeah. But it's sort of like it's followed me. So when I went out there and I saw this, I am drawn. I'm not sure I would go to the sweat lodges, and I'm not sure I'd even do the vision quests or anything, but I am fascinated by their history and the people. Absolutely, 100%. I'd love to know more about it.
That's, my friend Ruben Fasthorst, Lakota Sioux, speaks of the time where he did, I believe it was the Vision Quest, where he went out for 3 or 4 days and you sit in the circle and you're enclosed by spiritual markers. And he had the bowl of meat and the bowl of water and set in front of him as temptation to resist. And then he had, of course, visions after a few days and of doing this. And so there are some ceremonies like that, I know. There is, what was it with Native American that I was, the only reason I made that correlation is just because of location. It's location. And the tribes that existed there earlier. And now we know as well as anybody else, Indians, Native Americans, they can be just as normal people as everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's not like every Native American walking around is like a guru of some kind or a medicine man or a deep spiritual leader. But I know tribal life was something that was governed by that. And where the buffalo was the life, the spirituality they had was also their life. And Rapid Dog, welcome to the chat room. Visions? He says, yeah, visions. And so that's why I wondered. That question popped in my head, so I had to ask it. I've gotten into the habit of when something pops in my head, I should ask it.
But I also think it's like the differences between the two countries, because America is right next door, and you both have natives, the original people from that land. And I think that from a paranormal point of view and spiritual point of view, they're very open to believe in so much like that. And one of the things I want to do, and it's something that every time I go over there, I want to do that, is to learn more about the paranormal side of the native, because the whole ghost or spirit or whatever you want to use, as in what is in that particular area. So and because when I went out there once, I had breakfast at a place which used to be an old army. And back in the days of when they were fighting them still, I believe, and they were trying to, the land and everything. And I felt this terror. When I was in this building, I had no idea about this building. I had no idea what it was. I'd just gone there for breakfast. And I went upstairs to the ladies' room, and there was a couple of objects there, and I just suddenly felt really sick, because that's how it normally affects me when I pick up something. I feel really nauseous, and I just felt very like I couldn't breathe, and I just wanted to get out. And they were saying that it's the land that it sits on. There's blood being shed and stuff has been done, and it's like when you go out there, you really tap into this. So for me, I really hope to do more of that. What about you with the old natives where you are?
Well, yeah, there's I don't experience or run across a lot of native people in my area, although this whole area was once tribal land, obviously. We had in a house that's not far from here, it was the ranch house that Rainey and I had when we were first married, down about 30 miles south of where we are now. And in that ranch house, it was an old, beat up, kind of Dutch colonial style ranch house sitting on 40 acres. And we brought some friends in, and we did a little bit of a paranormal investigation of the house, because it had some history to it, and we just wanted to see. It was still empty before we moved in, and that's when Rainey got the words whispered in her ear. That was what was it? It was Hoiwechi, and she thought at first, she said, somebody just whispered. I think they said something like "la choy," which is Chinese food commercial on the grocery shelf. And I said, La Choy. She said, no, it's kind of like a hoi, something hoi wei chi. And so we went to Ruben and to some other friends first before I got a hold of Ruben on it. And Hoiwechi simply means it's Lakota Sioux, and it means, it might have been Dakota. I'm sorry, Dakota. Very similar. And the word means, Hoiwechi means get out.
Wow.
How many times do you get out when you're paranormal investigating? But it wasn't a negative. He says it's not a negative get out. It was more like I'm okay. You're good. You can go. You can go on your way. I won't bother you. You don't bother me. I'm good.
Mhm.
That's the kind of get out that Hoiwechi was. And so, yeah, the whole area there by the ranch, just a couple of miles from the ranch, had up in the hillside, and we keep it preserved this day. You're driving down one of the back country highways, and out across the farmers' fields are these low hills, and in the hillside was carved, not carved, it was placed in stone, a big arrow pointing the direction to the big lake on the river, and Lake Pepin down near Maiden Rock, Wisconsin. And that's been there for, they say, over 1,000 years. And they keep it preserved. They take care of it. And you can see it across probably about a quarter mile of, and they think it was a directional arrow for the tribes that say, when you go here and you get to this area, you look for the arrow on the hillside, and that will point the direction. So it was something like that. So we had all kinds of stuff like that in the surrounding area. I told you, and all of my listeners who are here have heard this story a few times, different version or different variations of it. But Fort Snelling, old Fort Snelling, which is in Minneapolis, right by the big international airport on the conflux of two rivers. I think it's the Mississippi and the Minnesota rivers. And it's an old fort sitting up on the bluff. And the fort's been there really for, well over 250 years. And there was nothing here 250 years ago other than Native American tribes. But during the just post, I think, Revolutionary War, that fort was built as an outpost. And it was used all the way up to, I believe, the Korean War as an active military fort. But out of that fort was where all the Western expansion into Minnesota went. And back in the 1860s, there was in southern Minnesota here, there was what they call the Dakota Uprising. And that's where the Dakota tribe was had become so bitter and put out by the settlers and the land stealing and all of this that they raided the pioneers' homes all up and down and killed a lot of people. And I think, as tragic as it is, justifiably so. And but the United States response was dramatic. And they took that whole tribe and they moved them into stockades. They really call it the first concentration camp in America, and for the Dakota Sioux. And there were women, children, families, men. And then they pulled out of that several hundred warriors and who'd been taken prisoner, and they wanted to execute them all. And it went all the way up to Abraham Lincoln, the president. And he said, I will, he had to sign off on it. They went like 300 men executed, if I've got my numbers right. And he said, no. He said, because of what it is, we're going to take this certain number of men that were warriors, 39 minus 1, he said. Nobody knows what his reasoning was. And that's lost to antiquity. But so 38 men were hung, Native American warriors all hung on one scaffold in Mankato, Minnesota, a little bit down south. And all the little towns between Minneapolis and Mankato are all named after a lot of the war chiefs: Shakopee, Chaska, Red Wing, all these names. They're Mankato itself. And so all that to say, we went to Fort Snelling and we did just daylight, and we went out in the woods there where this concentration camp would have stood below the bluffs and the fort you see up on the bluffs atop, and we're down in the river flats, and it's all forest with pathways going through now, paved pathways for park and rec. And we set up a little voice box. And as soon as we turned that on, we got all kinds of voices coming through. We got laughter. We got screaming. We got what sounded like crying. We got voices we couldn't understand. We got language that we thought sounded very Lakota. And as we closed it out, that session, I said, if there's anybody, I was really moved at the time. And I said, if there's anybody here that was here during the time that this fort had this concentration camp, what would be any message you'd want us to take back with us? And a male voice came through almost immediately, gruff male voice, and it said, remember us. Just like that. Rocky was there. Sarah Soderlin was there. I think we were the only three there that day. And they all heard it. And we shut the thing off, and we stood there in the woods, and right behind us, Sarah said, look over your shoulder. 2 deer just strolled right behind us and looked over at us, turned and strolled on into the woods. And now, coincidence, maybe. Probably not. So that's my Native American experience with the paranormal is limited to those little things. So, but I would say, like you, I have had major defining moments in my life from my travels and from adventure. I always wanted to be that guy, you put on the fedora and your blue jeans and a whip if you have one. But you go do adventure. You go do stuff. You go places. You see things. And whether it's, Honduras, and islands in Honduras, and looking for artifacts there. Or I was in Scotland and England, and it just totally absorbed into the history there. When you talked about that feeling that you get, I call it palpable. I stood at Glencoe in Scotland, and the feeling there was overwhelming. It was palpable for the slaughter that had taken place there. And so things like that I've done. But I'd say the most defining moments have been in Egypt. The times I've traveled there.
About that. I'd love to go to Egypt. It's my bucket list. So
I remember talking to you from Egypt. It was nighttime, and we were chatting online. You said, "So you're in Egypt? I'm so jealous." And I was trying to convince you should come on over.
I know. I wish I
got this close to wanting to come over to Egypt.
Been over there like that.
And that was a long time ago. But it doesn't.
What do you think going to Egypt had on you what effect did it have on you as a man, and what changed over in you since going there?
First of all, the experience. The original reason I had wanted to travel to Egypt years ago, ministry. I was in ministry. I wanted to see Egypt because it was so prominent in biblical studies and so on. And so I wanted to go see Egypt for that reason. Now, it morphed over the years. I had done a lot of study into, that guy right there, that bust, the white bust you see sitting there, Senenmut. I had written a book with John Ward, a British archaeologist. He's from Hereford, and by the way, and John. And we were writing a book on the historical Moses. So that was my guy. That's my guy, the candidate. Senenmut.
You're drawn to him, are you?
To this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. I am. And there were experiences I had. And I got to tell an abbreviated version. My listeners from my show have heard this story before. But as an abbreviated story, we went over when we were writing our book, The Exodus Reality, which was 2013. And I was looking for an experience. I wanted, no, let me rephrase that. I wasn't looking for, I got to go so I can have a spiritual experience. It wasn't that. I was looking for the adventure of it. And I wanted to see things. I wanted to stand in places where things happened. That was my draw. And about 2 weeks before my trip, a friend of mine died. A man named Philip Coppens, and some of you listening may remember him. He was an author. He was also he did talking head bits on the show Ancient Aliens, and Belgian man, and he died. And he had written the foreword for one of my books, and so we'd gotten a little bit close. And but for some reason, it hit me really hard. And it was on, I believe, December 30th of 2012 was when he passed. And when I got that news, I remember I started to weep. And it was almost uncontrollable. It was just rolling off my chin. And I thought, wow. I said to myself, even, why am I crying that hard over this? And as the story goes on, this lasted for days. I couldn't think about it without that affecting me. Now, this has a bearing on what happened in Egypt. I had a very good friend of mine, David Weatherly. He's a shaman and an author. He called me up out of the blue a couple of days later. He goes, "Hey, man, how's it going?" I go, "Fine. How you doing?" Typical, greetings. And he said, remember I would tell you in the past how when I would get messages from spirit or the universe, he says I could get it in, a box of mints would make me think of something, or a commercial on TV, or a song, or you should know this really well yourself, Wendy. Messages come in all kinds of different ways.
They do.
And he says, and I told you that sometimes, he says, I would hear a voice audibly. He said, I was sitting here about 10 minutes ago, and I heard a voice in my office say, "Call Scotty." And he said, so all I could do was pick up my phone and call you. He says, "What's going on?" And of course, that all by itself just started the floodgates again. It's like when you were a little kid and you skin your knee falling off your bike, and you go, "Oh," you blow on it, that hurt. And then your mom goes, "Oh, are you okay?" And then the tears come. It was that kind of thing. And so we talked for a bit. He didn't give me any indication. He knew Philip too. And he said he didn't make any conclusions for me. But he said, "I'm going to tell you this." He says, "You're going to Egypt in about a week." He said, "I want you to go with an open mind." That's all he said to me. He says, "Because it's going to change your life forever." And I said, "Wow." I said, "In what way?" He says, "I don't know. It's up to you." That's all I'm getting. And so I went to Egypt, of course. And this was a couple of weeks later, we're at the tomb of Senenmut, this guy. And I'm standing outside that tomb. It's in Luxor, in front of Deir el-Bahri, the temple of Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh of Egypt, that Senenmut was her grand vizier and held 92 different royal titles from her. And he had a tomb alongside the road in the hillside, right there, the cliffs. And so I was standing in front of the tomb, and John and his wife, Maria, they said, "We're going to go get coffee, Scotty." And he says, "Why don't you come with us?" And I said, "Give me a minute." And I stood down there, and I remember I was lighting a cigarette. It was this nonchalant, daylight, broad daylight. And I felt this power just go, just like hit me like a wall out of the left. And I said, "What the hell?" And I started weeping for no reason. And I said, "What the hell is that?" And I used more expletives, and they were bouncing off the walls down there. And so fast forward to way after this happened, and believe me, that was a drawn-on experience and a drawn-on a story.
Wow.
But I talked to Philip Coppens' widow, and talked about Luxor and so on. And she said, Philip and I said we were going to maybe meet you and John in Luxor while you were there. She said, we were writing a book. She said, "Do you know what that book was about?" She said about Senenmut and his relationship to Hatshepsut and the love story that was there. And she said, did you know that Philip believed he was a reincarnation of Senenmut? So I didn't know that. And then we started correlating dates. When did this happen? She said again, and I pulled out my journal that I write in. I flipped to, and I said, it was this day. And she said, oh my God, that's the same day I was sitting in the hotel in Scotland. We were doing a tour, and Philip's brother was filling in for Philip. And Philip appeared to us, just physical, full-on manifestation, then moved something on the table and disappeared. And it was at the same time as I was having that experience in Egypt. She seems to think, and she indicated that she thought Philip, being a reincarnation of Senenmut, was trying to tell me you're on the right path with the book we were writing and my theory. And so, anyway, all of that. Smoke like an Egyptian, says Rabid Dog. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Egypt is, I have to admit, it's the one country I think when it's on, I'll be happy when I go, and it's on, yes. I've always been drawn to Egypt. And when I go to the British Museum or places like when I went to the Vatican, they have a vast Egyptian collection. And all of a sudden you will see them and I just feel like I can't describe it, like I'm home. And yet, even with my makeup and stuff like that, with my eyes, it's always been, I don't know where I got the influence to do that, but it's just, I love the whole Egyptian side of thing. And I think that they're such an amazing race and they were so far advanced in so many ways. Yes. And there's so much, that's a whole new different subject on its own. But I think that we come down many times in different forms, reincarnation ourselves. Why wouldn't we be drawn to a time where we could have actually been in that time and we have a memory which we cannot remember, but it's there. And it, to be regressed, you might actually get some of it. But as Niall's saying, being a sensitive, being psychic, you do use your emotions because you're using all your, you're not just going in from your chakras, you're going in from your gut, and you're picking up. So I would imagine that that's how you link in with people, is through your emotional side. Some people don't, but it's like for you to get the tears, you kind of a bit clairsentient yourself because you're feeling. I remember a medium, a friend of mine, Ivan Lee, once said to me, what do you think is the strongest, clairaudient, clairvoyant, or clairsentient? And I said, I don't know. And he said, it's clairsentient because you actually feel the emotion. You're actually there. You feel it. So that's what you were feeling.
As a little follow-up to that event, again, a shorter story, but we were riding in the car, John and Rocky and I, we were going to go do a paranormal investigation. Rocky said, if you want to pray for protection, now's a good time while we're driving. So we're going down the interstate.
Okay.
I reached out to this person. And there's another event I didn't even add in here that happened at the same trip that was part of all this. But I reached out and I said, if you have the ability, I'm talking to somebody in Egypt now, a spirit. And I said, if you have the ability to reach out and offer me protection tonight, if I need it, I said, I feel kind of silly almost. I said, do you even hear me? And because I'd been told by somebody over there that this man will never leave Egypt, but he'll always be attached to you when you're there, not possessing, just attached. And so I reached out and I literally, Wendy, I felt I'm sitting with my eyes closed and I could feel arms come around my shoulders and clasp like this around my chest, chin on my head, like you see in the Egyptian statues. Like you can hardly see it there, but there's a little face right underneath that statue of Senenmut, the little princess. You see a lot of that in Egypt. And I felt that. That was a palpable moment as well. That was a fallout, if you will, of all that experience in Egypt. And I literally felt that. And it was like, yeah, right here.
I think with regression very briefly. Like my ex-husband, he was he was never being regressed. He was always open-minded but not really into it. He was regressed, and he took a long time to go under because he fought it. And he went back to a former life where he was in Egypt, but he wasn't Egyptian. He was actually Greek. And some of the stuff he talked about and the connection, you come down time and time again with different people. We're all attached by that little red cord, and we get drawn to people, and we come down time and time again. You and I could have been there in that time. You and Rainey could have been there in that time. You get drawn, and I think it calls to you. And the thing with Canada, with Egypt, two different countries, incredibly different, with their most incredible history of their own kind. But what an effect they've had on us. I mean, they changed our lives. And I said to you from the start, the question was, what did it do to change you?
Well, we've got 1 minute left before we have to go out on radio. But what it changed in me was a realization that there was something more real to that other world than I had anticipated, than I had expected. It was very different than what I thought. It changed me in the sense that I'm always drawn to Egypt now. And there is somebody there that knows me. And that's how it changed me. And I got to tell you, I hate to say we got 30 seconds and we got to go out. But Wendy, if you can, I know you're busy. If you can stay for a couple of minutes afterwards, we'll maybe take some questions and so on. But to everybody who's listening by radio over at subspace.radio, it's audio only over there. But if you're listening, just want to thank you for being here. And I'm just going to tell you this right now. Live long and prosper. We'll see you next time. Everybody else, stay tuned. All right. There we go. We are all done on radio. And so to everybody who's still sitting out there, if you've got, I'm just unplugging my headset. I need it on during the recording or the live show because it still picks up my mic and it picks up the feedback over on the radio station. So, what do you think, Wendy? You got time if people want to call in, maybe make a couple of comments, or they have to be short ones. Wendy is on her way in the morning to Calgary, Canada.
Yeah.
Or Calgary, Alberta, I guess.
Which means the show next week will be coming from Canada, not the United Kingdom.
Next week, yeah, you'll be in Canada, up there in
Which will be
the
really
mountains.
Good. Completely different energy, love.
Completely. That'll be interesting. So it'll be good to have you from Canada. So
yes, you'll have to change that whole picture behind and put
I'll hang a Canadian flag or something. All I've got sitting around here, I've got a Welsh flag.
Yeah.
I don't know how the English think of the Welsh, but I was going to put this up just because of that for your listeners over there. But I've got that.
Welsh.
So there you go. So there it is.
David, I've never wanted to travel to Canada more in my life. Oh my God, Uncle Dave, you're so funny.
What did he say? I've never wanted to travel again. Oh, more in my life. There it is. And the perspective, Wendy said, how close will I be to you when I'm in Canada? I could just hop over. And I said, I think Calgary is about 12 or 1,300 miles from here. So we're only this far on the map, but we're a long ways.
I know. It's so almost so near and so far.
I know.
I was going to come.
Look, we got Kenny.
Hello.
Ken Bellows.
Hey, everybody. I'll tell you what. All she's got to do is take a shortcut through the woods. That's all she's got to do.
There it is. Shortcut through the woods. It's
Now,
only a
and you'll be
7-hour
right there.
drive. We're in the
And you'll be right there.
northernmost state, but it's a 7-hour drive still to just the Canadian border. Ontario.
Listen,
and
Ken's
Winnipeg
already
is up
close, so he's on his way there. He'll be there before I am.
I
Yeah.
hear that. Hey, this is a great show, guys. I love it. I love
Thank
it.
you,
Great
KB.
show. You guys do a
And
fantastic
KB, by the
job.
way, tell everybody where they can find you every day.
Well, you can find me on Morning Coffee with me, KB, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find me, yeah. And come on by and have a cup of coffee with me. We'll talk about anything.
Right.
For sure.
As I discovered last week when I joined another Wendy on your show, which was quite entertaining.
Yeah, she was something else. She was.
Your face
yeah.
was something
She was
else.
hyped up.
Your face was something else. I was
I
watching
thought
you.
Scott. I thought Scotty Robertson was hyped up, but Scotty, she outdone you, brother. She outdone you.
I had one
will
day.
say
I
that.
had my day over there.
I'm gonna sit back and enjoy you guys. You guys are great, but like I said, Wendy, be safe on your travels. Have a great time. All you gotta do is take a shortcut through the woods. You want them in his backyard. You can't
I
miss
would love to be there.
Right on.
Look,
And Virginia is only
my fellow companion. Look, Dave's already on his way.
well, Calgary is about 1,300 miles that way. Virginia is only about 1,200 miles that way.
That's
So,
it. That's
something like
not
that.
far.
Choice, boys. I'm sport for choice. Like, because pop on over. Honestly, the Canadians are very friendly. You'll be very welcome, I'm sure.
Eh?
Yeah.
Eh?
Good time. Look,
Yeah.
In
I'm not gonna hold the
58
show.
years, I've only been there twice.
Canada?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I walked
literally,
across
it's
the
within
bridge
driving
once.
distance.
So,
Well, that's no excuse, Dave. Get in thy car and travel.
oh wait, I went to
Wow.
Winnipeg once.
There you go. There you go.
Reminds me of that song.
So, what are you in your? Are you in your car, KB?
Yeah, I'm in the Jeep. I had
He's
the
in a little
Christmas lights
quiet.
on.
He's in his quiet space.
He's
Yeah, I'm
getting
in
away
my
from the
quiet space.
grandkids.
Believe me, I'm in definitely in my quiet space. I mean, I had the
He's got
lights changed a while
grandkids
ago.
over.
Huh?
And, I talked to him this morning. He's got grandkids over, and he says, "I'm in my quiet space."
Yeah, I need a pole
Look at
right.
that.
I need a pole right here. I need a pole right there. That's what I
Look
need.
at those
Or you're
colours.
part Mexican.
Disco going
Something
on
like
there.
that.
Disco.
Yeah.
We're getting a full house here.
Your neighbor.
Hey, Niall.
Hey, Niall.
Niall has no flashing lights over in Ireland in his room.
But we can make them flash.
We can.
I want
Clap on
to
and clap
be-
off.
That's for sure, Ken. I really want to
KB,
be.
meet Niall. Niall's over in Ireland, and
Hi, Ken. How
KB's
you
in
doing?
Virginia.
What do you say, buddy? What you know good?
Good to see you. I heard you have good coffee.
What?
I think I was just entering the studio. You said you had good coffee. Was that you?
Well, I don't know if it's that great of coffee, but like I said, on Morning Coffee with me, we talk anything from politics, paranormal. We talk about the 3-letter word sex. And if you don't know anything about it, you're not the only one who can fake it. I can fake it too. So we
Sex?
talk about anything.
Sex?
It doesn't
we
matter.
don't talk
what it
about
is.
sex on this channel. We don't talk about sex.
Never.
On this channel.
We do on Morning Coffee. We'll talk about
Taboo.
anything. We'll talk about anything. I don't care what you guys want to talk about, as long as you don't threaten, kill, dismember, or harm anybody. You can say what you want to say to KB. I'm okay with that.
Let's go.
I think we're going to have to talk about sex, Scotty, on one of these shows.
I
Oh,
think
here we
we're
go.
gonna have to. We'll
I think
we'll have to
Okay.
converse, and hobnob over that one for
And
a
then
while.
Ken's going to pop on and come up with a comment. And Uncle Dave's going to be there stroking his beard.
And
Yeah.
Dave be stroking his beard. Okay. Yeah,
Matthew
that's
wants you to
nothing,
know, Wendy, that
Trying to
he's
get
in
it under
Barbados.
control.
Very nice too, Matthew.
Yes. So,
Well, Alberta doesn't really like the bilingual as Quebec has it. They're like, yeah, not impressed at all. But there you go. I'm just reading some of the lovely comments that people wrote down here.
Yeah.
Obviously, Uncle Dave's goes to be the nice comment. I mean, that's thank you. That's a lovely comment.
Field guy said, Canada, U.S. North, right? No, we have not annexed Canada yet.
Well, we tried.
Oh, Canada. Where that goes.
It's your neighbor. It's like an island. Like Ireland
Yeah.
is our neighbor, right? And
Mhm.
hello, neighbor. And you know, apart from winning the Eurovision Song Contest for so many times, you know, and taking it from us because like they've had such great. I mean, I remember going back. Is it Johnny Logan? Was it Johnny? I think it was Johnny. He was wonderful.
Johnny Logan. I think he won twice.
He was fantastic.
We actually had a run of Eurovision where we won like 3 or 4 times in a row, and it almost bankrupted the entire nation because you have to host it the next year. You know, the Eurovision. So we were like, oh shit, we've won again. So we had to,
everyone was saying, vote for Ireland. We don't want it again. Don't vote for Ireland. And Britain's going, well, hang on a minute. We had Brotherhood of Man. We had Bucks Fizz. We had Katrina in the Waves. And last year this year we were completely robbed again.
Yeah. You guys are good. Which is kind of ironic because Ireland hasn't been in it for the last years at this stage. But we had this ridiculous run where everyone says, "Oh my God, the Irish is the best songs ever," And I think it was around the time of Riverdance where we last sort of really won it with a song called "The Voice." This Celtic,
The Voice.
They love girls dressed in Celtic robes and playing violins and harps and stuff like that. So we won it again. I was like, oh God, and the government were like, my God, how big is the check this time? We have to go.
We were desperate for it. We were like, they've won it again.
Yes.
And so this year we had an amazing guy. I think he's Sam something. He had an amazing guy with his song.
Good guy.
Bassman.
Good stuff.
And literally he was robbed because, and everybody says he's robbed. You can look on YouTube. You can go through everything because of Ukraine. Ukraine got the public vote, but had that was a new thing brought into the Eurovision. Up until this point, they'd never had that. It was always with the judges. So the UK won the judge vote. So we're thinking this is brilliant. Finally, we've broken our dry spell. It's coming home, right?
No, it's coming home. I mean, apart from Ukraine, obviously they had to give it to Ukraine. Even though the Ukrainian song was a piece of shit. It was a terrible song. It was
terrible. And now
it was some kind of rap song.
Awful.
Awful.
Does Ireland have a team?
No, they weren't in. They weren't in last year.
You're
just
talking
waiting for something to be thrown at me.
But to add insult to injury, Ukraine said we couldn't possibly have the Eurovision here because we've got the war. So what we're doing is we're giving it to the England because they were runners up. So it's like, there you go. You can pay for it. You can have it. You didn't win it because we won the public vote.
Yeah, it's a bit like damning you with faint praise. You
so
can pay for it.
It's coming.
You can pay for it, but it was very funny watching the Eurovision because there's some great talent there.
There is,
and there's a camp side of me that loves the Eurovision. But the Ukrainian song was probably the worst song in the competition. But there was no way that they could lose because it was just a few months after the invasion, and nobody was willing to take that chance. That oh my God, I don't care what the song is like, just make them win it. You know what I mean?
I love your accent because I loved Father Ted. Hello there, Ted. And Father Ted was my favorite. And I actually went to college and trained with my fellow counsellor who lived next door to the guy who played Father Ted. And they were there, sadly, when he passed away very early. Yeah. And I loved Dougal and Father Jack.
Yeah, I know.
Father Jack was just like, drink. And it was
the drink.
Brilliant.
I'm suddenly reminded of Red Will Danaher from The Quiet Man, if you've seen the old John Wayne movie.
That I was thinking of too.
I was thinking of that, and I could see the Irish coach talking to his assistant coach. He says, "Coach, get out your book." And the coach says, "Yes, coach." And he says, write down the English theme in the book. And he says, I've done it, coach. He goes, now scratch a name through, scratch a line through it. And I have done. So that's Will Danaher. Write his name in the book. Now scratch it out.
I mean, the thing is, when we were talking about tonight, where we were going with countries and journeys, there was lots of countries, and Ireland was the other country, and Italy. But for me, Ireland is just the most amazing country. I mean, my family come from the south, and having been over there, and I was in the north, but I went to Newcastle, so on the mountains of Mourne, Lurgan, Belfast. I went all around the areas. It's like the most beautiful country, and has even the history is just like it's just I felt like I'd come home when I went to Ireland, and it was just the most amazing country. And like Italy was the other one. When I went to Italy, I felt like I was drawn there, and you don't have time when you're on for just an hour to sort of put in all those different countries that or where you feel drawn to. So we had to kind of pick the two that were bigger. And obviously for Scotty, it was Egypt, and for me, it was Canada. But Ireland I had quite some strange experiences in Ireland. And, when I went over to West Belfast, I really had some strange experiences because, being British, or at least born over here, it was like a completely different world. It really opened up your eyes to.
I'm not surprised that you had some kind of an emotional reaction to Belfast, because Belfast is very much a torn community. The 6 counties in the north to this day. So the blood has been shed, and the pain is there, and the visions are still there to this day. So even though they've tried everything they can to make Northern Ireland a sort of Anglo-Saxon, Irish kind of place for tourists, never completely works, in my opinion. And it never has, simply because there's half the population hate the other half, and that's the way it is,
Yes, sadly, true.
And that's within the 6 counties, and we're still fighting to have a proper assembly up there, and proper unification of the political parties, but that will never end. So, and some of the most beautiful sites are in those 6 counties, because they're kind of northerly, and the influences there are dramatic, especially from Scandinavia. But it tends to the English archaeologists tend to take over a lot of the findings from what they discover in the land, archaeologically speaking, from the Republic of Ireland. So,
there's English all over for you. We find something, we bring it back. Do we give it? Right. No, we keep it. That is our way, isn't it? That's the way it was for so many years, sadly.
I drew my first understanding of the history of our modern history of Ireland when I read Leon Uris's novel, his novel Trinity. And that gave me, I read that book about 30 years ago, and that gave me a real understanding of what was going on, such as it was in a novel, but an understanding of what was going on in Northern Ireland.
It's just there is a deep division. It's like a deep wound that never heals. And it doesn't matter what religion you are or what political divide you are. It's just like whenever I travel up north, and if I travel up north, it's usually because I want to get cheap stuff or whatever, because it tends to be slightly cheaper than, well, not so much these days because the prices of everything has gone through the roof. Or else I would want to go out to the countryside, maybe to Antrim or Fermanagh, one of the most remote areas. There are sections in Northern Ireland where they still speak Irish, but there are other sections where they're just completely and utterly alien, And when I was married, my father-in-law was from Northern Ireland, and he was. It's very much like meeting somebody who comes from Ukraine. Funny enough, who has gone through hardship in their lives. They have a different way of looking at the world, So even you can just drive 100 miles and you can cross an invisible line, and you'll be talking to somebody who's just not on the same wavelength as you were. And that's simply because of decades of hardship, and that's what we see down south whenever we go up north, which is kind of sad.
And the murals, obviously, like when I went over there, I mean, you know, my dad was a police officer, my stepdad was a prison officer, and I was like married to a Catholic, and when I went over there, I was thinking, oh my God, but they were wonderful people. The Irish are lovely people. They're very, very, you know, not all of them, like not all the British are, not all American are, but they were very friendly, very down to earth, you know. We'll give you the shirt off their back. What do you want to eat? What do you want to drink? How can we, you know, make you feel more? But for me, it was the Titanic as well that I was drawn to it for, because obviously she was Irish. You know, she had Irish in her too. And,
and it was built in Belfast as well.
Yeah, it was. And to see the dock where she was in was just... That made me the most thing out of all of my trip. I mean, it was wonderful to see all the other. I mean, I went to Bobby Sands' grave and I saw all that and paid respects and all that. But it was like when I saw where the Titanic was, I was like, oh my God, you know, that's where the Titanic was. And it just, I never thought it was that big until I actually saw it. So for sure, Ireland had a huge effect on me, and obviously I have Irish blood in me. But I can honestly say that when I saw, you know, when I went over there, it was not. What was the year I went over? 1990. What did I go over there? 1997. It was the year Diana died. 97, wasn't it?
Yeah, in 97. Yeah.
And everyone was mourning her over there. Everybody was, you know, they were all crying for her. They were all into her, you know, Diana, and they were watching it. And I couldn't work out that when he went to a Chinese, you know, I was expecting it to be this shop, and it was like a hole in the wall with a list on the side, and and the traffic lights had like protection on them. It was like, why do these people get in my cab when I've just hailed it? Like, why are all these different people getting in my cab? And you couldn't go on one side of the road. You know, one side had the green, white, and gold, and the other side has the red, white, and blue, and you just don't cross.
Exactly, and it's literally through some cities there is still to this day a wall that's like, you know, slowly getting built higher and higher. So you know, that's like 20-foot high, which divides one estate from the next estate, you know, so never the twain shall meet. And it's just, but at the same time, the relationship between England and Ireland is so close. I don't know. We almost have like an incestuous kind of relationship. We kind of hate each other and love each other.
We love each other. We hate each other. We marry each other. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, Ireland is our neighbour, like Canada is to America. And when I say to sometimes my Canadian friends will be here, and they'll go, someone will say, "Are you American?" And they go, "Don't insult me." Like, and I'm sure it's the same way back, right? And I remember being in Canada and someone saying to me, "What part of Scotland are you from?" And I went,
"Oh, nice."
If you said that to a Scottish person, right, they would kill you, because they are. Although I have Scottish, because I am predominantly with a bit of Scandinavian in me. I'm predominantly Celtic, you know, that's Scottish Irish, and and it was like, I sound nothing like Scot, although I'd love to have that accent.
Well, the Scots are very. I'm sorry about this, Scotty and Dave, by the way, but it is a lesson. I mean, the Scots are.
Go ahead and say it, Irishman.
Occasionally, we have a rugby match with Scotland, maybe a friendly.
Yes,
they're in different.
When you feel like being beat.
When the Scottish come over, it's like mayhem, because the Scottish and the Irish get on.
Where can we find a drink?
Yeah, drink.
I'm gonna put on me kilt, and I'm gonna go get some scotch.
It's just crazy, you know? And they're like, "Yeah, I heard," and the Scot will say, "I heard you guys hate the English as well. Well, we fucking hate them more, you know. And I was like, hey!
No, we hate them more.
Yeah.
And, you know, that
Often
reminds
on
me of the
St.
time
Patrick's
I was in a Welsh pub
Yeah.
and with a couple of buddies, and this was years ago. I was in a Welsh pub, and I made the mistake of calling all the Welshmen in there that were asking us where we were from. I said something about all you Brits, and they all stood up and said, "Excuse me, Brits?" They said, "We're not British.
Yeah.
You know, we're Welsh." Oh, hi. And then then they said, "We think we'll just call you Mr. Canada."
Yeah.
What do you feel about that?
It's kind of weird. The Scots are so passionate about their
I know.
identity.
Well, I had to buy
Yeah.
them a round of drinks.
And so helpless to do anything about it.
On the house.
So they're like, you know, they're up there, you know,
Right.
clutching their axes and
Kind of squashed down here because you've got the Welsh and the Scottish and then the Irish, and they,
Well, like I
they don't
say.
really like us.
I got
We're just
this.
like, "Hi."
There's a great
love
comedian.
you.
I mean, it's great. It's great to see. I've been watching some of the soccer. It's great to see Wales doing so well. But there's
There
a
you go.
comedian over here, and he put it perfectly when he was talking about Britain. You know, Britain is like the ultimate dysfunctional family. You have the drivers, the mother and father are the English. You know, like the royals
The
or
Welsh
whatever
flag.
driving. You know. And the Scottish guy is kicking his sister in the back seat, you know, and the Welsh one is pressed up against the window frame, going, "Please get me out of here! Please get me out of here!" You know, so it's like the whole of Britain do have a dysfunctional relationship with each other because Wales is like, "We don't want to annoy anybody, just leave us alone."
But
You know?
it's the same about.
Whereas the Scots is, "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" If I
Sounds
ever
like you're
get down
talking
there,
about a
I'll
lot of
kill you.
Glasgowians there.
It's the same
You know,
as
that's
same as Northern England though and
Yeah.
Southern England, because you put those two together, they're completely different. Like if you're up south and you go up north, right, and they're
Yeah.
just like,
Now, I can say this
Well,
because I'm
let
going to.
me ask you guys this. Y'all about the Scottish and all that. What's the difference between Northern Scotland and Southern Scotland? You know the difference?
Well, the whiskey's better.
they're all Scottish, they don't really care.
Not
No,
really. Go ahead.
The Northern Scotland holler hootman. The Southern Scotland they holler yowza. That's the difference.
Yowza.
Yeah, yowza.
But you know, the Highlanders are very different to the other Scots because they
Oh, yeah.
consider themselves very, very different. Like, so, you know, if you're further up in the Hebrides and you go up further in the Highlands, they see themselves completely different than to the rest of Scotland. And it's like certain parts of Ireland will see itself completely different to
I'll
other.
tell you, when I was in
Robert
Scotland way back, we're talking 1990, and I was with my ex-wife at the time, and we're in a little town in the Highlands somewhere. I could not tell you bloody where it was, but here we are, and I'm driving on the wrong side of the road, of course. The steering wheel on the right side,
Which
and we
doesn't
were
help.
looking for directions to get to a certain place. And I said, "Look," I said, there's an old guy walking down the street there. Why don't we pull over?" And he was on my wife's side of the car, so I lowered her window. I said, "Ask him where the such and such place is." "Excuse me," she says to him, and he stops. He's an old man. He's got a cane, and she says, "Could you tell me where the bed and breakfast is?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, well, first you go down and then you turn it to right. And once you get there by the post, and then you're there and you can miss it." And we're like, "Thank you."
Great.
Didn't want to make him repeat it.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least your accent, I mean, it's difficult in Ireland, you know, if in certain areas you do not want to open your mouth and you have to be careful what certain
Oh,
areas.
it's embarrassing. You know, if you're from Cork and you spoke like that, I certainly wouldn't be on this show because you wouldn't understand a flicking word I'm saying. Because it tends
I
to get
understood
very high
everything
pitched.
you said.
I remember being in a bar in Belfast, and it was a Republican bar, and literally I I was sort of sitting there thinking, oh my God. And my ex-hubby went for pee, and this gentleman come up to me and he looked at me and he's like, and they're writing down on the clipboard like, and who are you? And I went,
who are you?
And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to open my mouth here, and he's giving him my accent. And I just said, I'm with, who I was with, and they heard the surname and they were like, okay, yeah, fair enough. And when I come back, I was like, oh my God, I thought they were going to throw me out. And he was like, they probably would have done a lot worse. It was just so funny at the time because you're there and you're like nervous. But looking back, what an adventure! Like, what
an adventure! I mean, the thing of it, it's a perfect segue into what you were talking about in the show. In that, this powerful pull of the land. Wendy, you were talking about Canada. I put a few things in the comments. I think that it must have been pretty overwhelming to be in a land of that scope and size and dimension. It's kind of so different from living in England in so many ways.
It was a mind. It was a mind. The word mind fuck, if I want to use that word, because literally,
shocking.
I just went from being crammed into everything, because London is so crammed in and the energy is so different here, to being out in the open,
overwhelmed by space. Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, and then like to go and see the mountains and see how big they are and how tiny you are, and feel the energy of the place. I mean, Lake Louise is probably the place that I probably feel the most connection with, because they say Archangel Michael was supposed to be drawn to that place, and there has been sightings right at the top of Lake Louise. And when you go there, I swear to you, the first feeling I had when I went there is I wanted to get on my knees and pray, because I felt like I was in the presence of something mighty.
Yes.
And all I can say is I'm
very blessed. A lot of Europeans have that experience where they go to, not just Canada, but, huge swathes of the United States are like that. You just go to any of the major parks. It's like you walk in, to Yellowstone, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
This is like 15 cities,
Yeah.
And, I'm often amused by Europeans that I know that are going to be in the States, and they're like, oh, well, I've got a thing in New York, and then we're going to go to Washington, and we should pop over and see you. We're quite a ways from the states get big once you get past the Appalachians.
Yes.
So it's very much, it's overwhelming, and it's just it's to be expected. But if you're a spiritual person like Wendy is, or like you are, and Dave and myself, although I don't often talk about that, but I am.
Ken probably too. We don't want to leave Ken out.
Of course, sorry, Ken. It's just you're on the phone. Okay. So your picture is kind of much narrower.
He's from Virginia. We don't upset people from Virginia.
No, God forbid.
No, they have taught us several times.
Yeah, but I think when you actually sort of arrive in these countries, you can get so overwhelmed that first of all, the areas in Europe where we grew up in. Where all the iconography and the classic statues and the classic churches and the influence of the religion and all this kind of stuff. When you actually get out into the cities and the outskirts of the cities, it just becomes a totally different experience. And spiritually, it can kind of leave you slightly scared. I remember, slightly scared. I remember going to New York City, and then I drove out to Buffalo, and there was completely different experiences. In Times Square, I was terrified because everyone was like 6'7" and looked like they wanted to kill me, And then I went out to Buffalo, and everyone's walking their little chihuahuas, and then so it was kind of like I never really got the hang of distance. It's like if you get a new pair of glasses, you can't gauge your distance. So I was like that whenever I spent some time in the States. again, it would take such a long time to get from one place to another place, and then you pass through, a city, and then you go out to the suburbs where they have the industrial areas, which went on for hours and hours and hours. Then eventually you would end up, you'd see some trees, and then eventually you see some hills, and then eventually you'd arrive somewhere where you see some mountains. So it was massively,
I once
overwhelming.
Spent 5 days driving through Oklahoma. I mean, it was like, or Kansas or Oklahoma, I couldn't tell. And all there was, your highway and both sides, as far as the eye could see.
That freaks me out. That freaks me out. There's nothing there.
Nothing.
I can't
pasture land and
I need something. I need a shop. I need lights. Because we travel to Scotland, it's the furthest in the UK, for us to travel. And that will take you all day pretty much to get there. But it's like, we still get like the cat's eyes, or we get the lights, or we get like little towns or something like that. So when I went out there and there was nothing, and I have to tell you this story before I go. So we went out there, we were going to my ex-husband, my Canadian husband, it sounds terrible, my Irish husband, but literally we were going somewhere, and we broke down in the mountains. Well, I don't know anywhere out there. I really don't know anywhere. And I was like, oh my God, it was an avalanche area. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, 6 o'clock in the morning, it was just, just starting to get light. And it was an avalanche area, and we break down, and it's not going anywhere. So this guy comes in with this car, like down the line, and he pulls up. He goes, "You folks having some problems?" We were like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Would you like me to help?" And I was like, "That'd be lovely, thank you." Anyway, he's got this plastic hand hanging out of his, his boot, and just hanging out, one of those plastic hands hanging out.
It's like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And as he opens up the boot,
you like my boots?
As he opens up the boot, there's all these black bags in the back of it, and I'm like, oh, my hackles just went up. The London bit came and kicked in, and he goes, "It's a good job you guys broke down here and not a bit further." I can't even do the accent, but it's how he spoke to me, a bit further down the road. And I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "A lot of girls have gone missing and have been, murdered. And sometimes partners have too." And I was like, "What?" And I was quite green at that point. And he was like, "Oh, yeah. Over the last 20 years, just down there's a highway. A lot of girls have been killed and murdered, and sometimes the partners, and they've never caught the person doing it." I was like, "You need to do that, Tyre. We need to leave. We're going." So it was the quickest repair job ever.
Funny thing, they never did catch that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when we got to Golden, which was the town, we went to Golden. The car went into the garage, and I said to this guy, "So tell me, is there really a serial killer around where all these women have gone missing?" He went, "Yes, there is."
Oh.
He said, "You can Google it. I think it's called the Crying Highway or something like that." Over the last 20 odd years, a lot of women have gone missing.
Yeah, and they're mostly Native American girls, I think.
Yes,
I think it's called the Highway of Tears or something like that.
That's right. And we were just about to head on to that part. And I was like, Jesus, what if there was someone watching us? It was really, really scary. And I tell you what, I've never been so glad. I was like, "Come back, London. I was forgiven. I want you to come back."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because just to have that, there was nothing out there. And then you think, avalanche area. Don't have to put up with that. And obviously the bears were asleep, so we didn't have to worry about that. But the other predators were there. So it is scary. So I can totally take that where you're coming from now. And I'm very fortunate to be going there and seeing my best friend and some great friends over there. And I look forward to coming from there next week to talk to you all.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
we'll
listen, I'll let you guys go. I just wanted to support Wendy because I haven't been able to make it on the show since.
So good to see you, Niall.
And great job. And I'll see you from Canada next week if I can make it. And
see you, neighbor.
Best
all right, brother. Talk to you soon.
Nice.
All right. Just us now.
Want to tell you a story, so
I'm gonna get off so y'all can do y'all's closing
We're
and
just
all
gonna
that.
close things
Good
down.
seeing you guys,
All
and
Good
be
to see
safe
you,
on your
Kenny.
journey.
KB,
Huh?
before we go, you're fabulous.
Oh, can we say marvelous?
You're very naughty and you're marvelous.
I like to be naughty. I'm a naughty guy.
Kenny, you're fabulous,
well,
dude. There you
You
go.
do.
That's my version.
You are too, but you're still not getting me beer. You're not getting
There
my
it
beer.
is.
All right, guys. Y'all have a great one.
See you, brother. And Dave,
Dave.
good to see you, Uncle Dave. I will see you probably here on this on Intrepid Radio tomorrow night.
All right.
And so you have a good evening, brother. Talk to you soon. All right, Wendy, just you and me. Well, let's close her out.
And I just wanted to say, because I know it's your Thanksgiving over there, and I celebrated the Canadian one when my bestie was here, and I want to say thank you for being so supportive in my life, and I'm very thankful for our friendship and being such an amazing guy, such a great friend you are. Thank you.
If you were a slouch, I'd have dropped you as a friend years ago. How's that for a sideways compliment? There's a backhanded compliment. No, I love you, Wendy, and I appreciate your friendship. This has been fun. We'll do more next week.
Next week, I will see you next week from the lovely Okotoks or Calgary, one of those areas.
In Canada. Oh, Canada. All right. All right, Wendy, we'll see you later. And everybody else, we'll see you too. Live long and prosper.